All right, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Public Safety Drone Review. Thank you all so much for being here with us. I'm Miriam McNabb, editor of dronelife.com, or a site for commercial drone news, and my co-host is Tim Martin, retired captain of the Huntington Beach PD and director of UAS training at the Los Angeles Regional Training Center. Our guest today, we're really excited to have Gabriel Johnson from Sony North America. He'll be speaking about the Sony AirPeak, and Jake Christie of Elistair, who'll be talking about Elistair's Tether drone solutions, Orion 2. Thank you both so much for coming. Really appreciate your being here. But as always, these are not sponsored or paid appearances. We're bringing you the guests we think you would be most interested in hearing from. We really appreciate your time spending with us on the podcast. Before we get started with some news stories to discuss, it has been a big month for public safety news, and the National Public Safety UAS Conference held in Busch Gardens earlier in March. Lots going on, great success. We've had a lot of movement resulting from that. So Tim, can you give us an update on some of the drone responders news and things that have come out of recent conferences?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Gabriel and Jake, for being here. We really appreciate it. I think both of you will bring a good element to the future of drone trends and where your platforms are going, where they can take us. Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen here and go over some of the points of what you're talking about there. First off, some of the more exciting news is in some of what FAA is doing to move not just public safety, but any drone operations forward with some of the waivers that they're allowing. The first one is the Part 107 obstructed shielding ops waiver, which allows for those that don't have a COA to actually get a beyond visual line of sight waiver under certain circumstances. And essentially what it says is you're able to conduct low altitude operations at 50 feet altitude and allow for it says that you could do it without a visual observer. Highly recommended to use a visual observer, but this is a big step forward for agencies that don't have COAs that need the ability to have in a tactical situation, or if you're just simply inspecting power lines or utility poles, or anything that is giving you the ability to lose sight of your drone briefly. The drone has to be outfitted with the ADS be-in transponder so that other aircraft in the area knows about the operation. But for the most part, this is low altitude. You're staying within 50 feet of your object. Pretty exciting for the 107. There's also for those that have COAs that want to participate in a DFR program, the DFR ConOp waiver template that was created by drone responders with the FAA makes that a much simpler process. So that's kind of a big deal. And that brings us to the waiver that was granted to Pearland, Texas, for beyond visual line of sight without a visual observer. This is a big deal. This is using a bunch of different technologies, actually. So you're taking a traditional DFR program and you're adding technologies such as the iris automation sense and avoid technology, which is currently in operation in both aircraft and drones. The Census platform uses it. You've got elements of White Fox and DroneSense that are all coming together to give an agency the ability to use basically go beyond visual line of sight with no visual observer, no rooftop observer, and you can fly within the restrictions of your COA. That's a big deal. There's also additional. There's the new wildland fire waiver, which allows beyond visual line of sights for pre-incident reconnaissance in wildland fires. So if there's a red flag warning, you can actually operate a drone in that zone, which you weren't able to do before. So those are kind of big deals. moving the industry forward in the waiver world. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Go back to you, Miriam.
Yeah, and just to note, all of that information about those new developments is on the Drone Responders website. Look under the Drone Responders blog. You'll be able to see more information about all of those. So if you're looking for information about the waivers and the COAs, please look there. Good resource. If you haven't joined yet, you should.
And I'll add that link to the chat here.
Great. Excellent. Yeah. Pearland, Texas, big deal. That came out while we were actually at the National Public Safety UAS conference in Virginia. First of its kind, kind of means nobody's got to stand on the roof in the blazing sun in Texas, but also kind of makes that drone as first responder kind of much more practical from a staffing point of view. So really exciting for the community, and we'll see who can take that forward and get the next one and kind of expand their program. So we have a few stories from news sites around the world. These are not all from Drone Life. In fact, none of them are. And so we wanted to kind of take a minute to discuss some of the ways that people are using UAS in the public safety community. So first one, actually, Tim sent me, and this is really an interesting development for a lot of the world. Maybe not so much here in the US. We're very fortunate in that respect, but certainly for US agencies doing work in other parts of the world. And this is a metal detecting drone that finds landmines autonomously. So I don't know if you guys saw this. Great opportunity, right? I mean, this is sort of one of those perfect examples of sending a robotic solution in where you don't want a person.
Yeah, I'll show you guys it's really actually pretty cool. It's this it's these the company has some very unique drones. So if you have a chance to go to their website, look at what they have. They got some pretty wild stuff out there, but I felt that this was interesting technology because, like most of the technology we get in the civilian world, a lot of it is developed in the military market. But I definitely can see a metal detecting drone useful in public safety. So, I'd love to hear Gabe or Jake jump in if you have any thoughts on this. But essentially, it's autonomous. They work in almost like a swarm technique where they sweep a minefield and detect potential threats out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a really interesting concept. I mean, I'm kind of surprised it wasn't kind of built on a standard drone platform. I mean, you could probably realize that same angle with just metal detector hanging off of a drone, but in looking at it closer, I think what they realize is the efficiency of it, right? If you can keep it at that angle an entire time, even as you move across, you don't have to worry about the angle of the drone and pitching and all that. So it's pretty interesting. And Tim, you mentioned really uses in public safety. I'm even thinking in kind of I know in my area there's some old military explosive test ranges. And you think in a use case like that, I mean, it takes some years to clean those areas up. And imagine being able to deploy something like this, where it's now you can sweep an area probably far more efficiently. So, yeah, I mean, think of it more in kind of, I guess, in the civilian space. I mean, there's definitely some applications there that go beyond kind of the military use. So, yeah, really interesting.
Absolutely. Jake, what were you going to say?
Well, it's funny. I was getting some flashbacks from my time as a reconnaissance officer for a Patriot missile battery in the United States Army, and we had troops and we'd be selecting positions, utilizing the manual mine detectors, almost it was the same design angle to be included, and all the techniques and the risks involved of doing that with a manned operator having to hold that detector versus this technology, and I was able to look at it earlier, and just the coverage that they were able to provide with just the technology and the thought that went behind it. I think of just so many risk reductions and being able to utilize that technology versus having to put us some soldiers or some manpower out there. Yeah, really just awesome stuff.
Yeah, definitely a lot of opportunities to save lives in both a civilian and a military community. So yeah, great stuff.
And I think one thing that strikes me about this technology is like a lot of, especially what Sony AirPeak is doing. You can take a concept, and then once it's built by one manufacturer, then other manufacturers can start saying, well, how can we take the same hardware and software and incorporate it into our platforms? And that's definitely one of those technologies that where I could see it not staying with one manufacturer unless it's a super patented technology. I'm not sure, but I'm excited to see that. That struck me as definitely going into the future.
And I know anybody who's been at a drone show recently has seen Spot, the Boston Robotics dog, go out, and that's of course multi-use technology, many uses for this, and landmines is one of them. I would say they have made it really anthropomorphic and cute, so you sort of feel attached to Spot. I don't know if I want him to find a landmine, but definitely getting a lot of robotic solutions in place there. So the next story, really painful topic, but of course very relevant on people's minds here in the public safety community. And that is, of course, we have unfortunately in the US had another school shooting, and there was an article in GovTech about can drones have a role to play there? And I think that definitely they can. There is, we're not really talking about weaponized drones or anything. We're talking about the opportunity to go in and de-escalate a situation, to establish that communication, estiblish that awareness instantly, without sort of people having to necessarily engage with weaponry right off the bat. So yeah, hopefully more people can become equipped with these drones, and they can sort of provide that instantaneous or very fast, at any rate, connection. What do you guys think about that? This is sort of a very sad reality, but anything we can do to keep everybody as safe as possible and to get in there for situational awareness as fast as possible, I think has got to be good.
I think
Yeah. Go ahead, Jake.
so. I think that, as you were saying, the way things are going and the technology that we currently have available and are fine tuning those techniques and procedures. I think as we fine tune those details and those first responders are equipped, knowledgeable, and are given the proper tools, just the ability to be able to send an indoor free fly to map, more situational awareness, how many personnel and all the different sensors and data you could gain from that. And again, that's user safety being in mind. And of course, the safety of, the situation we're describing. I think it's something as an industry, it's worth our time to put in and come up with ways to better address these situations with the technology and what we have available to us and just how to apply it.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. It's kind of like every tool you've got in the box, this is one of those times to use it. So
yeah, the thing I think about in this instance is just the ability to accelerate the decision-making process, right? You got lives at stake. You're trying to figure out how do we protect everybody, right? Like obviously we've got officers who are putting their lives at risk to be able to neutralize the situation. You have people who are at risk as well. And so being able to deploy something like a drone in this situation, it just allows to be a better sense of what's really the full situation. Where is everybody? Where is everything located? What's going on? Maybe, like I said, establishing communication links. I mean, there's so many applications for this. I mean, I think of I've got a buddy who's in law enforcement, up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he works on the SWAT team. And he talks about their uses of drones for hostage situations in that case. So, I think similar applications here where it's like, let's get in there. Let's figure out ways to establish communication links and use the technology we have in our hands. I mean, we've been using, robots to disable bombs, for a long time. And this is, I think, just showing where technology can kind of help kind of meet an immediate kind of need in the space to help in these situations. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity that's out there. It's an unfortunate situation, but being able to use the technology in that way to just better assist. Yeah.
Yeah. Get everybody up there.
Yeah, I think the challenges, and Samantha asked in the chat about using the Boston Dynamics Spot as school security, and I know that the similar type of concept is being used right now by the Air Force with the Ghost Robotics Spot version, where they're actively doing perimeter security with the dogs. Both of you guys bring up a good point about the security of schools and not only detecting before it happens, but once it happens, getting that real-time situational awareness of where the suspect is. And it's been proven time and time again in law enforcement, when you put a drone into an environment where you have a suspect, the drone is very effective in distracting that suspect. Unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword with weaponizing it. If you read, one take on the school shootings is you put some type of less lethal device on the drone or some type of weapon on the drone to neutralize the suspect, and society's not ready for that at this point. There's great resistance in that area, even though in concept it's a great idea. It has to be thought out very well before that aspect is put into effect. But I think starting using drones as security and perimeters, and once inside the building, using it to our advantage to not only detect but distract the suspect is something we could start working on right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is I do think that's just something people aren't ready for, but it's kind of a situation where if we can say, hey, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, you still can use there are a lot of things you can use these tools for that don't involve weaponizing them. So, all right, another kind of a little tricky here. This is important though for the public safety community. So the particular article that I'm referring to was an opinion article, and I want to stress that this was an opinion article. However, the Florida Senate held a hearing in the Committee on Military and Veterans Affairs, Space and Domestic Security on March 14th. Florida Department of Management Services is pushing a rule that would mandate Florida government entities would be banned from using any drone manufactured in a country of foreign concern. At a hearing, Florida State Senator Tom Wright argued on the proposed rule, saying, "It is my estimation that this would require law enforcement agencies and fire departments across our state to throw away nearly $200 million of DJI drones." So something to kind of put out there. This is, of course, a concern. This has come up before, this kind of legislation in the States. So we're kind of watching this closely as the drone community to kind of see where this goes. Hopefully, there'll be some sort of a clause which means that people don't have to just down tools and can kind of move forward with their programs on some more scheduled basis. So
yeah, if you have the opportunity and some time to watch those hearings, they're all over the internet. You can actually watch them on YouTube, and you can listen to the arguments on both sides, and it's worth going there and listening to that because the arguments on both ends are strong, and there are other options out there, two of which are on this podcast, but it is interesting to listen to the arguments.
Yeah, and I think nobody wants it's not in the interest of any manufacturer or stakeholder anywhere in the environment to have people cease their programs and, you know, have to actually stop their programs, because it's very difficult to restart, and sort of a more gradual approach would I think benefit everybody. But we'll see what happens with that. We certainly don't want to see people have to stop, you know, kind of give up on their drone programs.
When I look at the situation, I see some interesting kind of things developing, and I think one, obviously, as you said, Tim, I mean, there's good arguments on both sides of this, right? You know, the banning or the allowing. On the allowing side, it's obviously efficiencies that have been gained, right, in terms of all these new use cases for drones, allowing to do things that haven't been done before in a more efficient manner, or just getting more data that hasn't been able to be gathered before. On the other side, there's the national security risk, right? And I think what the challenge is though you've got this immediate kind of concern around national security, while at the same time the industry is still kind of trying to fully catch up to all the needs, right? And so I think it does present an opportunity for the industry to really step up, and if this is the direction the policymakers are going, how do we fill that void? And so I think that's really, I think the challenge to the industry is saying, okay, well, if this is going to happen, what are all those use cases that are going to need to be filled if that's the direction it goes? But can you make a hard cut on it? I think that's the real challenge in this. Is it's like you start doing that, and then like the article stated there, you've got millions of dollars of drones suddenly that just got to be tossed out. Like, is that really the most efficient thing for us to be doing? And then retooling on that. So it's a complicated situation, but I think it's a real challenge to the industry to step up and start to fill some of that void that could be created as these policies proceed forward.
Yeah,
I think, Miriam, as you alluded to, kind of navigating it in a transitional manner, maybe in everyone's best interest, because again, both sides have such valid and legitimate concerns for a number of different factors that all kind of intermingle and intermesh. And at the end of the day, like you mentioned, there's units out there that are operating and utilizing this very expensive equipment and vital equipment for the missions that they're carrying out. So accounting for what's currently in the field, and I'm all for having a vision that keeps us safe and protects us in a number of different ways that helps us all. But at the same time, like you said, that the hard stop scares me personally, because I would hate to have that much gear and being unable to be exercised. But it's something, that challenge that we're all here together to work through together. So.
Right. And I think, what also has to be stated is that there's a certain amount of momentum. There's momentum in the commercial drone industry. There's momentum in the public safety community. We are really at the beginning of getting started with public safety drone programs. Yes, there are programs out there that are more experienced, but there are many more programs that haven't been started yet, or that are still in the sort of trial stage, or still in the sort of training, let's give one guy a drone and then we'll scale it later. And for all of those people, if you kind of kill those programs now, it's going to be a while before you get them back. And that's not good for the market. It's not good for the communities. That's not necessarily beneficial really for anybody. So we'll kind of see how this plays out, but interesting to look at. So. All right. One more super quick one, and then we're just gonna get into sort of products for the firefighters. USDA.gov, was talking about firefighting drone intelligence. So I sent out this news story earlier, and what was really interesting about it was that it really pointed out the fact that In this government, for this government agency, what they were talking about is a real coordination between manned and unmanned systems. It wasn't a case of sort of two completely different entities using different tools. It wasn't a case of one or the other, or we don't want you guys in the way. It was more of a case of when the manned aircraft can't fly, we send up the drones. Those inform when the manned aircraft can go in a super tightly coordinated operation between manned and unmanned aircraft. I think this is really great and really an excellent way to think about the integration of unmanned tools into systems like firefighting, you know, complex, dangerous, requiring a lot of different resources. And so to see this sort of understanding that there needs to be a tight integration between the manned and the unmanned aircraft, I think really can lead to an effective response. Tim, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, manned and unmanned. When I started our program, we have a full-time helicopter program, and we have 3 helicopters, 6 full-time pilots, and we had to integrate that. And at first, it was drones land, helicopters are up, drones are on the ground, and it evolved to we coexist, we share the airspace, we communicate. And I think this is a good segue right into Elistair and Jake, because I think that the tethered system is a way that those manned, and especially in firefighting, where those manned and unmanned aircraft can coexist.
Yeah,
it's safe. It's a lot safer. You don't have that factor of 2 aircraft flying around.
And as you were kind of describing the piece and whatnot, it really is about kind of filling in and everyone being on that same overall mission set and integrated accordingly. Like you said, having those decision trees for where it would best be served. You have an unmanned aircraft. I would specialize and say it may or may not need to be tethered, but then also for those manned situations and vice versa. And as Tim was saying, kind of having them all, they're all utilizing airspace in one way, shape, or form to address a mission critical situation. And I think ensuring that we're all empowering one another and assisting where we're filling those gaps, allows for that clearer picture and the ability to, increase the probability of overall mission success, of safety, all those important, crucial things that, your mission commanders and site commanders are concerned with, ensuring that top to bottom across, the number of different platforms, manned, unmanned, that's a huge piece. And I know, continually we're seeing that integration piece and the abilities and learning to kind of lean on those unmanned abilities the same way we lean on the manned capability.
So let's go back, Jake, and sort of talk about the fact that Orion 2 is a tethered system. So a long time ago, I had the opportunity to interview Helen Grainer. She's an amazing scientist, really a visionary in robotics, about Sci-Fi Works tethered solution. Sci-Fi Works is no longer in operation. I mean, she said to me, Miriam, it's actually a lot harder than you think to get a drone to just stay there. Stay in one place. It's not that easy. So talk a little bit about what a tethered drone solution does, because it's a little bit different it's a lot different, than necessarily one that's going to sort of free fly around an area.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Tether, and specifically our Orion 2, which is a tether only hexcopter drone, it much different in every way from a free fly in that aspect. The drone itself, the actual tether, your umbilical cord, if you will, is providing all of your power as well as your data, everything that you're getting through your payload, whether that's a camera payload, a sensor, a cell phone repeater, whatever it may be. You're able to have that going through your tether station. So envisioning kind of a nice box, and then appreciate that, Tim, for the photo. As you can see, that the tether station has its spool and the tether, which is active as you're ascending to whatever your coverage altitude needs to be. And then while there within our flight controls, you're able to maintain that geofence around your tether station and provide continuous ops. And that Orion 2 right there will fly continuously for up to 50 hours, which is quite the workhorse for some really long extended duration type missions. We were talking about firefighting earlier, being able to set up certain nodes and spots for situational awareness or heat sensors, trying to find hot spots. We've seen a number of different scenarios. And the main thing with our tether and with tether drone is you're able to get to that altitude, get to airspace, and remain there, and be able to have that ability to withstand, gusts of wind and all the different factors that your CPU and your flight controls are handling for you, and be focused on that mission, and what your feed is able to be uninterrupted throughout the time that you're operating. So that kind of is the long and short of it, is really that lifeline for not being bound by 30 minutes of flight time at a go, and those specific situations that call for that endurance when really are able to be accomplished with the Orion 2.
So let's talk about some of those use cases, because I can think of sort of obvious ones, like you got we, of course, here in Boston, where I'm located, we have the Boston Marathon every year. That is of course due to the tragedy several years ago. That's a big security effort at the finish line. But so I can think of sort of when you have events that happen periodically and you want to provide security, putting it up for that. Talk about some of the other use cases for this kind of system.
So yeah, you hit on a major one as it pertains to ISR, security, surveillance, and whatnot. But another one we see, especially in certain regions that are somewhat remote, is the ability to be tethered for tactical communication networks, cell on wings, if you will, CAL type enterprises, where a agency already has an aircraft fixed with a certain payload. We're able to actually incorporate those specific comm payloads into our Orion and integrate that into the comms network. That's a real big one that we see. And then another one that we see out there quite often is there's a number of different sensors and tests and things along those lines that surprisingly enough need to be at a certain altitude to monitor the waves in the ocean and things like that. And it's been pretty wild to see what they've been able to accomplish by keeping that payload, keeping that sensor at 200 feet of altitude, overlooking a certain direction and azimuth and whatnot. So that's another one that we see quite a bit. But yeah, so you have that ISR, the tactical communication, and then again, being able to have those different sensors and payloads for gathering that data over a much longer period of time. A lot of times, these agencies and those that are familiar with the benefits of drone aren't necessarily aware that they're able to gain that data and receive all that over a much larger span of time versus what you'd be limited to with a free fly battery.
So Jake, I'm sorry, can you just talk a little bit about the payloads, like the camera that comes with the Orion and the uniqueness of your tethered system, where it's actually compatible with other platforms, not just the Orion, which I think is unique for your system.
Yes, so sorry to clarify. So the Orion has a payload development kit to allow it to be compatible with a number of different payloads. And then as it pertains to our tether stations, we have a number of different modules, and we're compatible with a number of different aircrafts that are currently being in the market and whatnot. So there's a number of different ways that we take our technology, our special sauce of tethering, and incorporate that. And then as it pertains to the Orion, our payload development kit allows for easy integration for a number of different payloads that are out there. One of the bigger ones we're seeing now is the tactical communication network, as well as cellular repeaters as well, along those lines for cell coverage. I'm thinking of firefighting in the Pacific Northwest and areas like that, and being able to give them the ability to have comms over a massive square footage. We've seen that quite a bit. But there are certain things that we're able to do to allow for that integration and for those payloads to be integrated into get the power that payload is required to be able to gather that data directly and disperse it with minimal lag. things along those lines.
We had a question come in from the audience, actually for you, Jake, which is, what's the main limiting factor that you see for tethered drones?
There's only so much length in a spool, I will say.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a couple of different configurations, but there's only so much length. And there's so much that goes into the engineering as it pertains to, with every meter of altitude that you're rising, not only are you having to transmit that power vertically, but you're also adding that much more payload and weight. Not to mention you're adding additional square footage to act as a sail to kind of offset and then push your drone around a bit. You had mentioned the challenges of just simply hovering consistently and steadily, especially when you're trying to gain, actionable data and a clear picture as it pertains to your video feeds and things like that. So from a challenge standpoint, there's just the physical limitations of how much spool you can actually have in there, how much the aircrafts themselves can physically carry with at a safe rate to be able to handle different gusts and different variables that happen during flight. So that would be probably the primary one I would go to.
So it's
Yeah,
it's the strength and the weakness. It's the
Yes.
it is what it is, right? It's what makes it amazing.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
One thing that we see that helps with that kind of, as you were describing, it's a strength and its weakness. Like, yes, you're on a tether. That's great. I'm on a tether. I have power, but I'm on a tether. I can't free fly. In a lot of instances, we have agencies that come to us with a tethering need and don't necessarily want to have to get a turnkey tether system, and are able to convert their free fly drone into a tether application. We basically be able to multiply and double the capabilities of what their UAS team was able to do. Suddenly, Overwatch missions aren't some crazy headache with boxes and boxes of spare batteries we're changing through. We can just go through. We have a big festival. We have a NFL football game coming through. No big deal. So the ability to kind of plug and play is also something that we try our best to make things multiple applications and usefulness.
I think if you asked me as a younger program manager, I would tell you several years ago, I would have told you I want nothing to do with a tether. Now I want a tether, and it comes from experience and knowledge of what you just said. When I had to manage a team of 7 to 8 pilots and a bunch of batteries and changing drones out and being able to have a fixed camera in certain locations, I can tell you most of our deployments, long-term deployments, when you're talking protests or special events or barricaded suspects, when you're talking hours upon hours of drone deployments, I think having that tethered system is the answer to a lot of those problems. So if I had to pick right now the perfect diverse fleet, I would have a tethered system in there for that reason. Is that you're most of the time you're parked on top of a building looking down at a crowd or looking down at a house, and to have the ability to have that for hours is a big deal. So I think as programs progress and we learn, I think the tethered drone system is going to be the future for a diversified fleet.
Absolutely. It's just like you said, that multi-capability, the mission sets that your team now can take on with the increased level of confidence and from an overall command. I think like you had alluded to, you were able to kind of see the experience, kind of where that value and what that can do at the end user at the agency level.
And I have one more question for you, Jake, which is, how heavy and how big is the tether box? I know it's portable. I mean, you can put it in a truck and bring it to some place, but how much does that thing weigh?
I don't want to have it put on any extra weight that I need. So our safety 2 is around 55 pounds. And then our light T2, or I'm sorry, our light T4 and our safety 2 are 2 stations. Our light T person portable and is 43 pounds in a self-contained pellet case. And then the safety 2, the larger one that allows for a larger spool, more altitude, or power, things along those lines, is right there at the 55 to 56 pounds. So
Still
we
very
would advise
portable
that.
though.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We typically
Okay.
see it being done with no more than two, can be done with one, but it's always good to have an extra set of hands and a pair of eyes.
Yeah,
All
we had
right.
a couple questions in the chat that kind of go along with this. The first is, do you envision a city having a dedicated beyond visual line of sight drone network for public safety operations? And that's already happening now. And the other question had to do with going back to the firefighter question and integrating maybe a tethered system, is using the ADSB system will enable a lot more of that operation. Now the ADS, if it's the advanced detection system on aircraft, integrating that into drones, which is one of the requirements for that beyond visual line of sight waiver. Yeah, I think it's exciting for all of your platforms. And Jake, going into the safety aspect, there's a parachute system on the Orion. Is that a fail safe for the drone, or does that have the ability to detach the tether?
That's just purely, that's a safety redundancy. So it's tether only drone for the Orion, has that safety parachute in the event of a catastrophic event. We'd be able to, and actually was able to see some of the tests, and it's impressive what it can salvage when you end up just having to replace a leg. Just no big deal. But yeah, so that's one of them that's there. There are batteries that are also on the Orion too for redundant safety, to allow for an emergency landing if there something happened with your generator and it cut out, or somebody forgot to refuel it. So we kind of done everything we could to ensure that there's multiple methods of communication and multiple points of redundancy for every safety capacity that we have. We'd have a secondary and a third if necessary.
Great. Okay, I have one more quick question, then we're going to go on to Gabriel, and that is, somebody asked, what stops you from flying more than 50 hours? So you said a flight endurance of 50, or is that just how long you've tested it for?
That we've gone way beyond 50.
Okay.
50 is what we have on our spec sheets and our leaflets, and I love that number because but we're going way past that. A lot of times what we run into when you get into multi-day operations, sometimes Mother Nature can exceed the limits of the aircraft, and so we come down for those reasons sometimes. Then just ensuring you have ample manning, just because it's turnkey and plug and play and very, very user friendly. We still want to have vigilant operators and a responsible remote piloting command to be able to transition over through their 8-hour shifts or whatever your TTPs are. But those are typically what we run into. And again, stay tuned. I would advise I'll probably be able to advertise more than 50 soon. But good question.
Great.
We keep growing. Our workhorse up there. Need Mother Nature to cooperate.
Terrific. Thank you. So Gabriel, we're going to switch over now and talk about the Sony AirPeak. First, let's talk about you. I know you've been with Sony for a long time now. Yeah,
it's going to be 15 years here in May, actually. It's hard, I can't believe I'm actually saying that, but yeah, 15 years at Sony. Spent 8 of those years on our Alpha camera team before coming over and picking up the drone business. So yeah, it's been a good stint.
And Sony AirPeak, that has been out. I remember covering the launch. We were all really excited to see, so Sony is such a name in imaging, to see the drone come out. So tell us kind of how that's evolving and what's happening with that.
Yeah, so we started shipping at the end of 2021. And, when you probably first saw some of the early press releases and a lot of the marketing we put out, really positioned this as like a photo cinema drone, right? But we always knew the big market was enterprise, but we wanted to kind of walk before we ran. We know the photo cinema space really well. We do a lot of business there and have a lot of connections and contacts and insights from that into the business. And so we really thought we would probably have some runway to learn more about what kind of enterprise and industrial market kind of needed. And even public safety. But as we kind of got into market, we quickly saw there was a lot of interest in using AirPeak beyond just the photo and cinema aspects of it. And so over last year, we really kind of gathering a lot of those like insights and understandings of the workflows and the payload needs to be able to cater more to the enterprise and industrial market more and more. So it's definitely been a quick learning curve. I think, especially in light of some of the things we talked about earlier, like a lot of the bans that are happening now on Chinese drones. I think there's been even more fervent interest than we originally had anticipated from the enterprise and industrial sector.
Okay. And you recently, a couple of months ago, you held a pretty large invite-only summit to kind of gather input and show off some things. What happened there? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we held our first summit for AirPeak back in February. And it was kind of a brainchild coming out of some internal brainstorming we did of just like, how do we kind of better get the market excited about the product? How do we get our customers excited about where we're going? Because Sony has a reputation as a big consumer electronics company for launching products and maybe not sticking with them necessarily. We wanted to definitely give confidence to the market that Sony's in this for the long term. Given our history in imaging, I mean that was a category I was in that the people asked the same questions: are you really into this for long term? Given kind of our prowess in that space and now moving into the drone space, we're in this to really further the capabilities of what's possible with drones. And so the summit was really an opportunity for us to get a lot of feedback directly from our end customers and people that we've been talking to that are interested in the platform and maybe getting into it. It's an opportunity for people to network as well. So giving folks in the industry a chance to network even across verticals, because that's kind of really interesting. It seems like the photo cinema and the enterprise industrial are like completely different spaces. But bringing actually those two groups together was really interesting. I think it showed for a lot of the photo cinema guys what else they can be doing with their drone beyond just getting great, beautiful footage. And it also showed, folks in the enterprise industrial space what's really possible with the high quality optics that we're able to deliver by putting alpha cameras on there. We've got over 100 plus combinations of camera and lens that you can outfit on AirPeak. And so that really kind of opens up a lot of different use cases for that space. But just playing the video there, that was kind of a recap of the event, and we got a lot of great feedback from there. Actually, Tim, we had Tim there, and he got to see some of the new stuff that we're going to be releasing here soon. We were able to test that out and even also show off some concept stuff as well from third parties. So we were able to show off a few things which I think we'll probably get into a little later, like LiDAR solutions and thermal solutions as well that third parties have been working on. So I think that ties back into that kind of immediate need for different payloads and capability for the industrial and enterprise space. So all in a great event. It was great learnings for us. I know we had our engineering team there and they walked away with a ton of great feedback as far as like, what's kind of needed in the market. So, we're definitely here to listen, to learn, and to get better insights to just, help the industry that much more.
Because I think, certainly originally, drones were all about flying cameras. And even now, when you talk about situational awareness and you talk about, for many of the applications, whether that's firefighting and you're using thermal imaging, or you're still talking about getting a camera someplace that's difficult to get to. So it's really interesting interaction to have the imaging specialists put that platform up in the air. And Tim, you were mentioning earlier, and Gabriel, you mentioned briefly that you've got sort of third parties working on different payloads there, which is a really interesting model and kind of a quicker, let's get these things to market efficiently, so to speak.
Yeah, Gabriel, I'll jump on the screen share and I'll show some of the data, but Air Peak came to the training center last year and said, "Hey, look at this drone. Tell us what you think, and fly it. And is it something that could be used in public safety?" And we did. We got a chance to fly the Air Peak, and it was a great experience. The hardware itself, the drone, is a solid platform that flies really well. And we gave them our feedback, and at the time, they ran with it, and they're working towards a really solid platform that could be used in public safety. And I'll jump on the screen share here and kind of give you some one thing that we talked about was the ability to have both thermal imaging and LiDAR imaging for public safety. And I'll let Gabe talk about who they're partnering with if he chooses to. But in public safety, thermal imaging is key. We have to have that thermal camera. One nice thing about the Air Peak is it's got a 5-pound payload delivery. So that was one of the feedbacks we told them is, hey, can you put a delivery system on there? 5 pounds is a lot when you're talking about getting supplies or ammunition or medical supplies to somebody that needs it in search and rescue environment. So Gabe, I'll throw these images up and I'll let you talk about each one. We'll start up here with the LiDAR system.
Yeah, so Tim, you hit it right there on the head. A lot of people, when they saw the specs of the drone, they're like, 5.5 pounds, like, okay, what else can we put on this thing? And so that has been I would say, biggest ask, beyond other, just kind of drone improvements, is like, what else can we put on this? Can we get other things attached to this? So we've had folks approach us. Guys here from Inertial Labs had approached us and said, hey, we could put a LiDAR system on this. We can get it mounted cleanly and get outputs from it. So actually, at our summit, we showcased that concept that they had built. And I mean, it was pretty impressive. I mean, in a matter of minutes, able to get that kind of data. You can see they're off to the right on there using our drone. So the ability to strap something, under 5.5 pounds on there and start getting data right away really opens up what's possible with the platform. So that's one example there. And then on the other here, this was I was particularly excited to see this come together because we went to our first exponential show last year, and I would say this was probably the #1 request I got was like, can you do thermal? And so I was approached. Actually, this was like 4 weeks before our event, and somebody came to say, hey, I think we can actually build something for this. So the guys, Aerial Thermal Imaging, shout out to Eric and Will over there, got to it, and they started building something out. And they actually were able to realize an integrated concept here. So yeah, it's as Tim talked about for public safety, I mean, this is huge. Other sectors as well are really interested in this type of concept. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's going to be too far before you see something like that in market from some of our third parties. And then this third one here, this one's kind of fun. This is actually a little bit of a brainchild of Tim's here. As a matter of fact, we met with him at the regional training center. He said, really cool if you guys had like a payload release on this. And then, some people got to work on it, and we're like, I think we can actually make that work. So we actually had a pilot actually build that little 3D printed release there. And the concept was so simple, right? Because I think everyone immediately wants to run towards like, oh, it needs to be electronic, and there needs to be some kind of like, button and thing to do this thing, and then, robotic release, plus. And this is literally a pin drop. You attach it to the legs, and as the legs extend, which you do have control of that in our flight app to be able to control whether the legs go up or down. It releases the pin. I couldn't think of a more simple concept, but I mean, the applications for that, particularly in public safety, are huge.
Well,
and
you
can think
just
of
showed the
races.
life buoy,
Yeah,
right? That's
exactly,
like
life preserver.
perfect.
I mean,
Yeah,
like,
drop the life
Lifeline.
preserver. Yeah.
right there you go. So and that was like a really simple concept, but you can imagine, being able to kind of build on that for other types of payloads potentially. So yeah, so I think what we've been able to kind of prove out is that the platform is very versatile. That you can strap a lot of different things on here, potentially up to that 5.5 pound weight limit. The thing I tell people is, if you can manage the weight, you can balance the plate, she'll fly at night. So if you keep that kind of idea in mind with this, I mean, it's very capable. Um, and something else I mentioned too that's really big in the current state, and how this will evolve over time, I think is something our team's deeply studying now, but is the integration, right? A lot of systems out there are bringing together a lot of different pieces of a platform. Our team really took some painstaking effort to really make an integrated system. So the controls and everything that are on our cameras are also visible right in the flight app. So if you're familiar with using Alpha cameras, you're going to see a lot of similar controls right on the flight app as well. And that's an all kind of integrated experience. And then how that's going to extend over time is something we're still looking at, with like third-party applications. But for the time being, when you fly it all Sony, it's all going to be a really integrated experience.
Great. And so you're NDAA compliant, right? So
We are.
this is
We are.
okay.
We haven't officially public documents on that yet, but we've done the study, and it is there. And been approached by several government entities, and they've had us kind of go through the steps on that to validate it, and it's met that requirement. So that's I know something everybody's really looking for right now, and so we do have that advantage there in terms of being able to use our platform if you have NDA compliant needs.
Okay.
Well,
And
I think it's great on both of your sides. Let's say we have to think outside the box, and both of your platforms are thinking outside the box on what public safety is used to. So that's what's exciting to me, is that both of your companies have taken suggestions from public safety and moved it forward. Both Sony using aftermarket products that you don't have to do it all yourself. You don't have to invent everything yourself. You can use that technology convergence, and you build a real solid drone and a good camera, but go to other vendors for other things. And I think Elistair has done that also with the fact that you have the Orion 2 as an option, but you also can use other drone platforms with their Tether system. And that's thinking outside the box. That's giving us the ability to use these platforms to adapt to what we're already doing. So we appreciate that aspect of it.
absolutely. Anything we're almost at the end here, and it always goes so fast. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring up? I want to make sure I give you each the opportunity. Jake, anything you want to say about the platform and public safety? Or
I appreciated being invited and be able to talk on this forum. I think it's specifically for Tether. Just getting that education piece and make sure people are aware of what's out there, and what it can do. So I really appreciate you guys giving me this platform to join you guys, to learn, to talk about our industry. So thank you guys so much, and it's been a pleasure. Over here with Gabriel.
always great to have awesome people on with us. Gabriel.
Yeah, well, similar. Thank you guys for having me on, and allow me to kind of share some more about the AirPeak platform. We're excited to be a part of this industry, and just to bring what Sony can bring to this space, and help as much as we can to further use cases in public safety. So really excited to have been here, and thank you again.
Thanks everybody for spending the hour with us. It always goes really fast. We appreciate you so much. The recording of this webcast will be on the Drone Life TV YouTube channel ongoing. You can catch it anytime there if you came in late. And next month, April, we will have Kelly Broadbeck of Teledyne FLIR on the show with us. Tim, anything
Thank you,
wanna
guys.
say?
No, thank you, Miriam. You always bring us home. And Gabe and Jake, thanks again for your time. We really appreciate it. And that's it. That's all I got.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Great, thank you.
You.